There are seasons in life, a lot of seasons, that ask you to rest. We've talked a lot about those seasons here on this show. And there are seasons that ask you to really lean in, to do the work to rise. And on a personal note, I've been living in the first one for a bit. The last 6 months, I've really given myself a lot of permission to rest and restore after the launch of my book. And I can feel a call to grit. And I want to talk about that today. Welcome to your daily hit of grace and grit, your quick dose of inspiration to kickstart your day. I'm Courtney Townley, and here is today's hit. So what is a season of grit? I think this is important to clarify because I think the word grit can be interpreted in different ways for different people. A season of grit is not about punishing yourself. It's not abandoning yourself. It's not ignoring yourself. It's not about white knuckling your way through something or grinding yourself into the ground. A season of grit is a season where you make a deliberate decision to turn the dial of discipline up in a specific area of your life. You know you're going in, and you are going to be a little bit more tired, a little bit more sore. You are going to have to sacrifice some things. And you make that trade consciously because you know what's on the other side of it and you want it. The season of grace that precedes it or comes after it, because the seasons of grace and grit, I really believe, kind of flow like the nervous system. The nervous system is meant to go through periods of effort and intensity, and then it is meant to go through periods of rest and recovery. Now, on a daily basis, your nervous system should be cycling through that all the time. But if you look at your life as a whole, there are also seasons of this oscillation. And a season of grace, seasons, I should say plural of grace, are so necessary, right? Rest, recovery, and renewal, they're not options if you want to have anything left to give when the season of effort arrives. I know this because, as I said at the intro, I've been deep in a season of grace for the past few months. I knew I needed it. Everyone around me, I think, knew I needed it. And I gave myself full permission for it. I planned this season before I even started writing my book. I knew if I leaned into getting that project out in the world, I was going to feel tired on the other side. And I don't even feel physically tired, but it was like a creative tired. So I gave myself permission for that. And because of it, I now feel more restored, more creative, more excited, and more ready for whatever's next than I have in a really long time. I can feel a shift coming. And like myself, probably a lot like you, I'm sure you can relate to this. I've been through a lot of seasons of grit in my life. And each one has taught me something different. So getting the Consistency Code book across the finish line last year required years of showing up, adding work to an already very full life. And I had to show up when I didn't feel like it. I had to sacrifice things I didn't want to sacrifice. I had to hold a vision for something that I had no guarantee of working out, right? I didn't know how this book was going to do. And that was grit. I think it's an example of grit in its purest form. I leaned in because I was devoted. And I didn't just lean in, I was all in. I wasn't doing the one toe dip, I was doing the full body plunge. And I did it based on faith. Faith that however this turned out, I was going to be okay. So devotion ignited it. And I just trusted that there was a reason I needed to write this book. But what that looked like on the other side, I didn't know. And I still don't know, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever published a book, you've written a book, you might know if you have. But books take a while to catch fire. And definitely we're seeing that with the consistency code. Like, we've been very consistent with our sales. We see more and more people sharing it. It's starting to fall into the hands of a lot of professionals who are sharing it in their realms, which is just awesome. But I've also lived seasons of grit around my health, lots of seasons, where I leaned in really intensely to achieve a certain skill set or create a certain outcome, or even just needed to realign, right? That required grit too. I've had to rebuild habits when I've drifted, recommitted to practices that had lapsed, and do the uncomfortable work of starting again, resuming. I really prefer that phrase, resuming to starting over. It's really starting again. It's not starting over. And seasons of grit, I've even experienced, of course, in my relationships, where I've had to turn more attention towards certain connections that really hadn't been getting the nourishment that they needed from me. And when I started to suffer the consequences of that, that was a really good indicator for me that I needed to do more work in that relationship. So what these seasons share is that they all required me to turn up the dial somewhere. And every time I turned it up in one area, I had to be honest about where I was turning it down in another. Because as much as we don't like this fact, resources are finite. Grit in one place almost always means less elsewhere. I have less resources to allocate somewhere else, at least for a season. So how do you know when a season of grit is calling you? Well, I think you feel it. You know in your bones that it's true. There's a restlessness. I would almost label it with integrity pain. There's that internal friction that starts to rise when you have rested long enough. There's a pull towards something. There's a quiet frustration with your own stagnation. An awareness that the grace you've been giving yourself has shifted from nourishing to now depleting. So I want you to ask yourself, is the grace I'm extending myself right now, if you can relate to that, if you've been in a season of grace, and hey, I totally get it if you're someone who actually needs a season of grace. But if you're someone who's maybe overextended and you're kind of getting hints of that, you've overextended your season of grace, is it really helping you to recover and rebuild? Or has it become a way of avoiding the effort you know you need to make? And I've talked about this a lot on the show, right? We often disguise excuses as grace. We start making a lot of excuses for why we can't do something. And it's not really grace. It's not wanting to lean into effort, hardship, discomfort, uncertainty. So that's a really honest question. And the crazy thing, and I say this a lot with the questions I ask, it's one only you can answer. No one can answer that question for you. I can't look at someone and say with certainty why they're behaving a certain way. Now, I can work with people for a pretty long time and get a pretty clear understanding. of their seasons and maybe where they're spending too much time, whether it's in grace or grit. But at the end of the day, you're the only person who can really answer that question. So if you're someone who tends to live too far on the grace end of the spectrum, this is your nudge, right? Grace is a quality we want to practice always, of course, but it's not the destination. It's often the preparation. At some point, the rest has to become fuel for something because we know that's what helps humans to thrive. When we are actually pursuing things, creating things, inspiring things, being of service to people and causes, that's what rest affords us. But if we're always in the rest or the deep grace stage, we don't ever get to that work. And that's not just a shame for you, it's a shame for everyone who could benefit from the things you're being called to do. So, as I always say on this show, I'm never trying to challenge you to do everything at once. I'm not asking you to be gritty in every area of your life. But pick an area. We all have an area where we have leaned a little bit too far for too long into grace, to the point of stagnation, to the point of depletion, to the point that it's now costing us something. Where is that area for you? Where in your life is a season of grit calling you now? It can't be everywhere, right? We can't be gritty in all places and spaces of our life. I've tried that. You do not need to do it. I have the t-shirt. You don't want one. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? Because a lot of you listening to this show, you listen to this show because you too have lived most of your life in grit. But I think anytime we have done something a certain way for too long and we've experienced the detrimental effects of that, we tend to swing to the other end of the spectrum. And we can hang out on that other end for too long where it becomes the same thing, depleting, stagnant, not useful. So where in your life is a season of grit calling you now? Name it. And then maybe take a step towards it. If you are someone who enjoys these podcasts and you want to watch me live this out in real time, how I apply these principles to my own life, I would really encourage you to join my Substack. It's called A Little Bit of Grace and Grit. And if you're on my newsletter, you have definitely gotten notifications of this. But every Tuesday, I go live for 20 minutes or less in something I call Live the Code Live. And it's basically just where I share my very real rumbles of my own life and how I'm using the principles from my book, The Consistency Code, to navigate those rumbles. So it's just raw, it's honest, it's exactly the kind of behind the scenes that you don't really get anywhere else in my work. I know I share stories occasionally here on the show, but this is just a different layer down. So you can always find me over at A Little Bit of Grace and Grit on Substack, or just Google my name on Substack and you'll find the account. I hope to see you there. If this stirred something inside of you, imagine what a whole book of clarity and courage could ignite. The Consistency Code, a midlife woman's guide to deep health and happiness, goes even deeper into the mindset and practices that create real, meaningful change at midlife. Grab your copy today over at theconsistencycode.com and keep the momentum alive.